Chapter 15. Merrill Carson straightened his red wool tie, removed his suit coat, and rubbed his bald head and craggy face with both open hands. The cocky, short bulldog of a man stood at the end of a long table inside the gray stone police headquarters building in downtown Chicago as he addressed his detectives and two FBI agents. The FBI has come to help us as the Giovanni case seems to be growing far past the borders of Illinois. I want to introduce Agents Harley Parks and Lance Drury. I want to share everything with them, and hopefully they will do the same for us. Rudy, what have you found out talking to some of the force's retirees you worked with years back? I didn't have to go back too far, gentlemen, Rudy replied, looking at his notes. Assuming Tony Giovanni is still alive, he would be 45 years old. He graduated from Lincoln High School here in Chicago in 1895. Up until 10 years ago, when he was supposedly murdered, he kept in touch with some of his high school friends. He must have been a popular kid. All of his classmates I found remembered him and the guys he ran around with. His best friend seemed to be one Fred Sweeney. I spent some time with Mr. Sweeney yesterday at his grocery store and learned a lot about Tony. He married his childhood sweetheart, Lena Slikova, who has two sisters, Anna and Marina, Rudy reported. The detectives madly scribbled in their notebooks as Rudy continued with his briefing. Their dad is Dmitri Slikova, a driver and bodyguard for Mario Giovanni SR. Sweeney told me where the Slikovas lived back in the day, so I went there and talked with old Dmitri. He is one of the biggest men I have ever seen. Some of those Russians are humongous. Some of the men chuckled at hearing Rudy's comment. Dmitri seemed cooperative. I talked to him and his wife, Olga, for 30 to 45 minutes. I asked them what happened to Lena after Tony died, and they said she moved to Los Angeles. They last heard from her about 9 years ago when she said she met a doctor. She was considering marrying him to help raise her boys. When they buried Tony's coffin, Piero was 11 and Anthony was 14. They would be 21 and 24 now. I asked the Slikovas if they had pictures of Lena or the boys. They said they didn't have any, but I truly doubt that. We need to scare up some photos of the boys and compare them to Buck's sketches. I asked Dmitri and Olga if they read in the papers about Tony's body not being in the unearthed coffin. Olga started crying and nodded her head yes. Dmitri was solemn and nodded his head without saying anything. As Giovanni's bodyguard at the time, he could have been the guy who put Rosso Garandio in Tony's box and hid Tony somewhere else. But there's no way he would have shared that information with us or his wife. They gave me Lena's last known address in LA. We need someone to visit that neighborhood and gather some answers. I asked about Lena's sisters. They provided me with contact information in Chicago for Anna, who is married to a man named Brett. Marina married a guy named Timpson, who now seems to be another missing person. They said their son, Sergei, moved back to their hometown of Kiev, Ukraine. Aural Budyakova was Lena's best friend. Olga Slikova thinks she's still in the area, but I haven't had a chance to catch up with her yet. They didn't know if she goes by a different married name, but she was in Lena's and Tony's graduating class at Lincoln High. Rudy sipped his coffee, concluding his findings. Can you guys check out the leads in Lena's old neighborhood in LA? Carson asked Lance and Harley. Sure, I'll call Blake Lockhart in LA. Harley, a 250-pound ex-Marine with bulging muscles and a crew cut, offered. Carson turned to his detectives, took a drag off his Camel, and snuffed it out in an ashtray full of butts. This Marina Timpson is interesting since no one knows where she is. It's fishy, and we need to follow up on it. Reese and Sal, you need to find her. Rudy, can you find Anna Slikova Breton and Aural Budyakova? And try to find out why Sergei moved back to Kiev. He may be doing some human trafficking to keep the speakeasies full of girls. Or he might have something to do with all the Russian printed US currency that seems to be showing up everywhere. Those Russians are into everything. Lance Drury, a tall, thin, Scandinavian-complexioned ex-Marine threw in. Years back, I followed old Dmitri around quite a bit. I never could pin anything on him, but I knew he was breaking every law in the book. He must have retired about the time they buried Tony. He probably engineered the Tony Giovanni Russo Garandio debacle. Several things don't match up in my mind, Sal commented. We need to find out who that peroxide blonde floozy is who hired Stopello to bury Mario. We also need to find Marina Timpson. I have a hunch she might be the blonde floozy, and Barbara Hart is a peroxide blonde. Could Barbara, Marina, and the peroxide blonde floozy be the same person? And did Mario have a girlfriend? He must have known Marina since they were young. If Dmitri Slykovo was Mario SR's bodyguard, Mario Jr. was never married, but he must have had someone to keep his pecker polished. Maybe he just used all the gals who came in and out of his place of business. But if the blonde floozy had him buried, she must have been closer to him than the rest. Interesting thought, Reese responded, scratching his chin. Let's take the sketch artist down to the mortuary to meet with Stopello and sketch that peroxide blonde floozy. We need to see if she looks like Hart or anyone else. Whoever she is, we need to talk to her. It would be nice if the Slykovas would share some of their family photos with us. But I'll bet that old man is smarter than that. Rudy left the meeting and drove to Roston's. Looking into the window, he saw a dark barroom. The door was locked, so he walked the crowded sidewalk around the building, hoping to see something significant. He spied Belknap shaded under a sycamore tree, hiding from the hot sun. Rudy quizzed Belknap for an update on the activity around Rosty's since the night of the 5 murders there. This morning, Belknap related that he saw Barbara Hart with an unfamiliar guy looking over the outside of Rosty's before they entered the building. With that, Belknap and Rudy went to the back door where Hart and her companion had entered earlier and tried the door. It, too, was locked. Rudy left Belknap at his post under the sycamore tree and drove to Anna Breton's address, which Dmitri Slykova had given him. A lady sat knitting in the bay window. He walked onto the porch of the white-trimmed gray house and knocked. A tall, thin, blue-eyed blonde woman answered the door. She appeared to be in her early 40s and was quite attractive. Mrs. Breton? Rudy inquired. Yes. How may I help you? Anna asked. I am Detective Robinson with the Chicago Police Department, Rudy announced politely. Yes, Anna said. My father told me to expect you. Please come in. This is my husband, Bob Breton. Would you like a cup of coffee? That would be great, Rudy said appreciatively. Have a seat and make yourself comfortable, Bob offered. Thank you, replied Rudy, sitting in a straight back, wide-armed oak chair next to a matching coffee table in a room full of needlepoint pillows and floral upholstered, musty-smelling furniture. What do you do, Mr. Breton? Rudy asked. I run the 18th and Ada Market just down the street. Returning to the room, Anna asked, I understand you want to talk about my sister Lena? She placed a cup and saucer on the coffee table near Rudy. Yes, I would like to find Lena. As you have probably read in the newspaper, we recently discovered that Tony Giovanni has not been in his supposed casket for the last 10 years. We want to find Tony if he is still alive. Tony was the good Giovanni and may have some insight into his father's and brother's business. Well, Anna began, I believe that Mario Jr. killed both his father and Tony to get control of all the family's money. When Lena moved to California, she was devastated. She just wanted to get as far from here as possible. She wanted to get married, change her name, and hide her sons from Mario and the mob so they wouldn't be killed too. Mario was selfish and greedy. He didn't want to share any inheritance Mario Sr. would give to Tony or his family. Lena was a pretty young widow then. She knew how to attract a good man. Last I knew, that is what she did. She very intentionally didn't tell me her new man's name or where they moved after they got married. She only said goodbye, and I would never hear from her again. She wanted to raise her boys somewhere safe, where Mario and his thugs could never find them. I miss her and hope she and her sons are safe wherever they are. I hope you can't find them because others may also be able to if you can. Now that we know it wasn't Tony in his casket, do you think he's still alive? Rudy asked Anna. As far as Tony still being alive, I doubt that. Lena and Tony loved each other very much. It would be wonderful if they were together, where they could never be found, living a happy life with their 2 sons. That would be my dream for them. But at this point, with all that has gone down, I can't imagine Tony is still alive. Anna guessed sadly. Bob, sitting quietly, drinking his coffee, interjected. I certainly thought Tony was in the coffin we buried next to Mario SR. But now I'm thinking maybe he is still alive. I'm sure Anna's father knows the truth, Rudy surmised. If Anna's father helped Tony disappear and knew he was still alive, he wouldn't have said so, or Mario Jr. would have had him skinned alive, Bob said. Dimitri worked for the old man. If the old man wanted to help Tony disappear, Dimitri probably helped. If he did, and young Mario found out, Dimitri probably wouldn't be with us anymore. Now that Mario Jr. is gone, why wouldn't Dimitri talk? Rudy queried. I don't know anything about how those guys operate, but my guess is it's a lot more complicated than any of us can imagine. Frankly, I'm glad I don't know. Anna and I have spent our lives distancing ourselves from these kinds of issues, Bob explained. That's probably the smartest thing you can do, Rudy agreed. What about your other sister and brother? Were they close to Lena? Rudy asked Anna. Marina and Sergi were always close, and Lena and I were close. I'm sure neither of them would care if Lena were still alive or not. I haven't seen Marina since Tony's funeral. She was a gold digger, always trying to get close to Mario for his money. But Mario didn't seem to need a woman except for sex. He was too selfish. He never wanted to share anything with anyone, and that's why he killed Tony. Sergi moved back to Kiev, where we were all born, to do business with my uncle there, and I haven't seen or heard from him in years either, Anna explained, picking up her knitting. Do you mind if I knit while we talk? It calms me. Talking about Tony's family is stressful. I was so fond of Tony, but Mario was a monster, Anna said. I, too, like Lena, wanted to get as far away from the mob as possible. My son and daughter both go to school in this neighborhood. We all work in the market together, and no one has to look over their shoulder to see if someone is falling. Growing up with my dad working with old Mario scared me, not knowing if he would someday disappear like so many mobsters do. I like my simple life with my husband, who makes an honest living. Our life is good, and I don't want to do anything to mess that up. I can appreciate that, Mrs. Breton. We need more people like you and your husband, Rudy agreed. If you were going to look for your sister Marina, where would you start? Probably as close to Mario as I could get, but since he's gone, I have no idea. Do you think your brother kept in contact with Mario? Maybe, I don't know. He was working with Mario before he left for Kiev. Who knows what those guys are up to? I'm glad I don't know, she said, pausing to count her rows. Do you have any pictures of Sergi and Marina? Rudy asked. No, I don't. They both graduated from Lincoln High School, Sergi in 1896 and Marina in 1900. You might be able to find someone who has their old school annual that would have their pictures in it, Anna suggested. Maybe the school keeps a copy. What can you tell me about Lena's friend, Aral Budyakova? Rudy asked. I see Aral once or twice a year. We talk about our hope for Lena to be happy and safe, Anna explained. Can you tell me where I can find Aral? Any information may help us, and possibly help Lena too, Rudy said. The only thing that can help Lena is not to be found by anyone, Anna curtly informed Rudy. I'll write down Aral's address for you. She looked in a small notebook, wrote the address, and handed it to Robinson. I appreciate the time you took to talk to me, Mr. and Mrs. Breton. Our conversation must have brought up some unpleasant times in your life, Rudy remarked kindly. getting up from his chair. Life is life, Anna replied, showing him to the door. Meanwhile, Sal, Reese, and Ildon exited the mortuary with a sketch of the peroxide blonde floozy whom Stopello talked about. It was definitely Barbara Hart. Rudy found copies of the 1896 and 1900 annuals from the Lincoln High School library. Matching Buck's sketch with the school annuals at Lincoln High School revealed that Barbara Hart, Marina Timpson, and Marina Slikova were all the same person. I guess we've already talked to her, Sal stated. And what a pleasure it was, Reese sighed. But now there is so much more to talk to her about. Sal, Reese, and Rudy Robinson arrived at Rosty's the next day. Great minds think alike, Sal joked to Rudy. What brings you here? Rudy asked. We are looking for Barbara Hart, who we believe is also Marina Slikova Timpson, Reese stated. And what brings you here? I want to find out who is reopening Rosty's. Belknap has seen a new face around here lately, and I want to know who he is, Rudy replied. The three of them went inside through the open door. A crew was replacing the blood-stained hardwood floor and changing out the molding where the walls and ceiling met. Could you tell me who is in charge here? Rudy asked a carpenter who was sawing an ornate molding. His name is Sergi, responded the carpenter. I don't think he's here right now. Do you know when he'll be back? Rudy questioned. It's not my turn to watch him, the carpenter replied. He comes and goes. Do you happen to know his last name? Rudy pushed. Slikova, I think he said. And is he the only one that seems involved in the reopening? Sal asked. A gal named Barbara seems to have something to do with it. I think she's upstairs. The carpenter pointed to the stairway. Rudy turned to Sal and Reese. I'll let you guys talk to the Slikovals. I'm going to interview Aral Budikova. Barbara is meaner than a rattlesnake, and you young bucks can handle her much better than I. Yeah, thanks, Rudy. Sal gritted his teeth. Go upstairs and stir up that beehive, Reese. While they hesitated, Barbara came tapping down the stairs in her black stilettos. You guys again. What do you want now? She hissed, arching her painted-on eyebrows. We are here on a different subject than we talked to you about before, Mrs. Timpson, Reese said, removing his fedora and exposing his bald head. My name is Barbara Hart, if you don't mind. I changed my name because the thought of John Timpson turns my stomach, she said, rolling her eyes. Yes, that's what I understand, Reese affirmed. And do you know where we might find Johnny Timpson? Last I knew, he was in jail. You guys should know more about his whereabouts than I, she growled, hands on her hips. What was he in jail for? Reese queried as he wiped the sweat from his brow. Damned if I know, and I don't care, as long as I never have to see the son of a bitch again, she snarled. Assuming that he is out of jail, where might we find him? Sal asked. 1023 Oregon Street is where his folks live. Maybe you should go bother them and leave me alone, she snapped, turning to leave. We'll do that, Reese replied gladly. But first, we need to talk to you about what you may know about why Roseau Garandio was in Tony Giovanni's casket for the last 10 years. Barbara stopped and turned around, rolling her eyes again. How would I know? Do I look like I spend my time switching bodies down at the cemetery? I don't even own a shovel, you stupid pig, she snarled. I didn't accuse you of anything, Miss Hart, Reese defended. I just thought you may have heard something from the crowd you hung out with through the years. I understand you were always close to Mario Jr. No one was close to Mario. He was emotionally dead and too selfish to care about anyone but himself, she said with a blank look. Who owns this building now that Mario is gone? Reese asked. It's mine. Mario left his entire estate to me. There wasn't much left after the robbers got finished, but they didn't steal his will, she barked. So, you will be reopening Rosty's? Reese asked. Yes. It was a great place to eat, and the cooks need a job, she snorted. So, do you intend to start up all the illegal stuff that made Mario so much money? Reese leaned in. I just want to have a good restaurant, she said. Can you tell me where I can find your sister Lena? Reese kept up with the questioning like a well-seasoned detective despite the woman's surliness. I haven't seen that pompous little bitch since Tony's funeral. As far as I know, she left the country and never returned. Reese continued his questioning, undeterred. When will your brother be back? Why? Are you going to follow him around and bother him like you do me? She grumbled. We don't follow you around and bother you, Miss Hart. We have even overlooked the law on your behalf. I don't know why you can't see that, Reese stated politely. When did your brother come back to Chicago? 3 weeks ago. He came back to help me open Rosty's. She grumbled. Where can we find him? Reese asked. He should be back here any time now. He just went to the hardware store, she answered, realizing Reese wasn't giving up. We'll wait for him then, Reese declared, leaning on the bar. Make yourself at home, detective. I still have some work to do upstairs. Hart turned and climbed the stairway, her heels clicking on every step. What a miserable old bitch, Sal whispered. Let's hope Sergi has a nicer personality, Reese said, agreeing with a nod. Meanwhile, Rudy and Sabino drove to the address Anna had given him for Aral Bujikova. They parked in front of a 3-story, red brick building with wrought iron railing up 10 steps to a landing. Planters of red geraniums graced both sides of the entryway. Rudy and Sabino climbed the steps and knocked on the door. A tall, full-figured woman answered. Her white skin, coal black hair, and brown eyes identified her Ukrainian descent. Aral Bujikova? Rudy questioned. Yes. How may I help you? She smiled. 2 dimples, as deep as whirlpools, appeared in her plump cheeks. I am Officer Robinson, and this is Officer J.O. We are with the Chicago Police Department, Rudy said, showing his badge. I would like to ask you some questions about Lena Giovanni. Please come in and have a seat, Detective, Aral invited. May I offer you a cup of coffee? No thank you, Miss Bujikova. Aral, please. Call me Aral, she said. Do you know where I can find Lena? Rudy asked. No, officer, I don't. Lena wanted to disappear, and she did a good job of it. She is, or was, my very best friend, and she asked me to please respect her disappearance because of her husband's brother. She needed to make sure no one from her past life would ever find her. She had to give up everybody she cared about to be sure she could raise her boys in safety. You must have read the recent paper. What do you make of the body in Tony Giovanni's casket not being his? Rudy asked. I know just enough about Tony's family not to be surprised and not to question anything about them, Aral declared. I have no opinions or questions. The less I know about those people, the better. To Rudy's disappointment, she could only collaborate with what he already knew. Thank you for your time, Rudy said, getting up to leave. You're welcome, officer. Aral showed Rudy and Sabino to the door. With no new leads to run down, Reese and Sal spent most of the afternoon sitting on bar stools at Rosty's, hoping to meet Sergei Slikova. Around 3 p.m., a large man walked into Rosty's with a wooden box stuffed with hardware supplies. He placed the box on the bar and showed one of the workmen its contents. Sergei Slikova? Sal asked him, standing up and extending his hand. Who's asking? Slikova squinted through the smoke of the cigarette hanging from the side of his mouth. I am Detective Sal Corbin, and this is Detective Reese Williams. We're with the Chicago Police Department. The 2 men flashed their badges for Sergei to see. What can I do for you? Sergei asked, engulfing Sal's hand with a gargantuan meaty paw. We would like to ask you a few questions, Reese said. As you may already know, we recently found out Tony Giovanni was not in the grave marked with his name. We are looking for him and his wife, Lena, your sister, and we were wondering if you could help us find them. I left the country shortly after Tony's death and just returned a month ago. My sister Marina inherited Mario Giovanni's estate, and I came here to help her run the business, Sergei said. I know nothing about Tony or my sister Lena. I understand that Lena married a doctor in California, and no one has heard from her since. What was your relationship to Mario Giovanni? Sal inquired. I worked for Mario before I went back to Kiev, but I haven't seen him since I left, Sergei replied matter-of-factly. Did you do business with him while you were in Kiev? Sal questioned. No. All the time I was gone, I worked for my uncle, who has a construction business there. He stammered with a look that spelled a lot. Knowing this conversation was going nowhere, Reese interrupted. Welcome back to the USA. I wish you well in your new endeavors. I hope you will keep things legal. I would rather stay friendly than have to become enemies. Sure, Detective, me too, Sergei answered, his eyes looking everywhere but at the detectives. Corbin's and William's suspicions of undivulged secrets were solidified. It was good to meet you, Sal said, handing Sergei his contact information. Please give us a call if anything comes to mind. Sure thing, Sergei responded, unaware that his mannerisms were read like a book. Once in their car, Reese looked at Sal. That big son of a bitch is guilty of a million things yet to be discovered. We need to be watching him. Yeah, it's written all over him. But I don't think he has anything to do with what we are looking for right now if he just got back here a month ago, Sal replied. We don't know that he hasn't been here all the time, Reese reasoned. I think he would rather lie even if the truth sounded better. We need to spend the rest of our careers watching him out of the corner of our eyes, Sal agreed. Sooner or later, we'll find out where that bank money is. Back in the gray, Stone Precinct building, Chicago detectives Merrill Carson, Reese Williams, and Sal Corbin, along with FBI agents Harley Parks and Lance Dury, listen to Rudy Robinson's update on his and Sabino Jao's progress. We talked to Anna Slikova Breton and Aral Budukova, Rudy began. Their statements only support what we already knew. They were either well rehearsed or honest. I think we are at a dead end with them. Reese carried on. That despicable bitch, Barbara Hart, has turned out to be none other than Marina Slikova Timpson. She spent her life trying to get close to Mario, and it must have finally worked because she inherited Mario's estate. She had nothing good to say about her husband, Johnny Timpson, and she has recruited her brother Sergei to help her reopen Rosty's and run her other businesses, whatever they may be. We haven't yet totally figured out what Mario was into other than gambling, prostitution, and liquor. Sergei says he came back to the US from Kiev about a month ago, but as Sal will agree, he is a slimeball we need to watch. He said he was working for his uncle's construction company in Ukraine, but my first guess is that he worked for Mario all along. The bottom line is that both Barbara and Sergei claim to have had no contact with their sister, Lena, since Tony's funeral, and neither seems even to like her. After a long pause, Merrill Carson looked at Harley Parks and Lance Dury. What did your man and Ellie come up with? He checked out the neighborhood where Lena lived for a year or so, and a couple of neighbors remembered her. They both had a similar story. Lena was quiet and mostly kept to herself. Neither of them saw her with a man, but they did have an understanding that she was going to marry a doctor from Winnipeg. When she moved away, both neighbors thought that's where she went. We checked with our friends at the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Winnipeg, and they came up with nothing. Winnipeg has no doctors, with a wife previously named Lena Slikova or Giovanni. It looks like we all went out and asked a lot of questions and got no answers, Parks said, flexing his jaw muscles and scratching his temples. Just another week in the business we're in, Carson agreed. We need to talk to Timpson, whoever he is. If he's not getting along with his wife or ex-wife, he may talk to us freely. Rudy, see if you can find him. Let's have another get-together in a couple of days. We need to get to the bottom of this.